Yep. Okay, great. Then let's go ahead and let's call this meeting to order. What are we on? February 10th already? If we could, Ebony, could you please take the roll?
Chair Wilson,
Here.
Vice Chair Benavides,
Excused.
Trustee Foyt,
Present.
Trustee Wah,
Present.
Trustee Haran, here. Trustee Melendrez,
Here.
Trustee Ortiz,
Here.
Trustee Ramaker,
Here.
Trustee Rogers,
Here.
Trustee Whiteley.
Here.
And we do have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just once before my time as chair is up, we are going to have somebody sing the anthem. Do we have any public comment? Signed up for public comment at this time?
We do have an email for public comment.
Great. If you could please read that into the record for us.
Director Watson and trustees, I am writing in opposition to agenda item the item to start the change of the time of the board meeting.
Hey,
At
I'm
this
on
comment-
Zoom meeting.
I'm sorry.
Okay, bye.
As this comment is being read, I'm mostly listening in my car because I like the majority of branch staff either work until 6 p.m., 6:15, or 8:15 p.m. on Thursdays, which makes attending or watching live difficult. I would like to applaud the board for making their meetings more accessible by broadcasting live on YouTube. But I believe changing the start time to 5 p.m. is a step in the wrong direction. 5 p.m. is a busy time in the branches with programming, patrons, and staffing concerns, which means less staff will be able to watch live. If the board values frontline staff attendance, I would recommend changing the meeting to 7 p.m. This would give the staff that gets off at 6 and 6:15 the opportunity to attend in person. Thank you for your consideration. Scott Clonin, 525 East St. Louis Avenue, number 11, Las Vegas, 89104.
Thank you for those comments. Agenda item 3, has everybody had a chance to review the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Agenda,
Second,
all in
Jose.
favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Awesome.
Aye.
Agenda item 4, minutes from our January meeting. Does anybody have any questions, addendums, corrections, etc.?
Move to approve.
On that, I will accept the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item 5, Chair's report. Couple of real quick things. Where is my note here? You should have all the board should have received a tentative outline for the director's annual review. It covered the different bullet points of the goals that were laid out when we had originally hired Director Watson for us to evaluate on in his performance for the year. If anybody sees anything that was missing or you think should be included in that before the director moves forward with completing that form for us, if you could just send those to me as soon as you can, preferably by Monday if possible, so we can make sure we get that form amended to the director so he can go ahead and start working on completing it, so we can get that back from him and move forward on his annual review. If anybody didn't get it, just shoot me a text or an email and I'll forward it over to you. second to that, second thing I wanted to mention is there anything in particular, Keith, that you wanted to share? Any updates about West Las Vegas for the board at this moment?
Hi, Chair Wilson. Thank you for giving me the audience. Just want to probably defer to staff member John Vito, maybe part of his update. We can sort of do an official update together and include what's going on with the West Side Library, in particular, the most recent meetings that we've had with Councilman or Commissioner McCurdy and other stakeholders, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, on that note, then we'll just go ahead and go on to the library reports then. Perfect. Well, Director Watson, Mr. Vino, I see he's already stepped up here, so do you want to?
Yes, and I don't want to steal
one
any
last
of
item on my
John's
report. It's so
thunder.
nice to
So
see everybody. Yes.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. My report is submitted. Don't have any additional things to add to the report, but I would like to share that the library district has hired a new development director. She does not officially start until February the 18th, but she's actually here tonight. So I'll just take a few minutes to introduce everyone to Joanne Privetti. Joanne, if you'll stand. So a few words about Joanne, and she's going to do a more formal introduction at the next meeting. But I want to just say that Joanne has extensive knowledge and experience with fundraising in the Las Vegas community. She's worked with Jim Rogers, founder of the Rogers Foundation from 1998 until 2009. From 2010 to 2017, she worked for the Griffin Communications Group as a registered lobbyist / director of operations and media. From 2017 until 2020, Joanne worked for the UNLV School of Medicine, where she functioned in multiple roles in development, marketing, and chief of staff. She has been with Centene, a Fortune 25 company, since 2020. She's executive manager of marketing and communication with a focus on corporate giving. She has, again, extensive knowledge. Some of the donor organizations that she has relationships with are the Venetian, MGM, Target, and Citibank, as well as trust attorneys who want to donate money and give those and have those tax write-offs. So I just want to take a minute to welcome Joanne. And Joanne has a BS in legal studies, I want to say that, an MBA, and she's working on a Master of Government and a Doctor of Business Administration. So welcome, Joanne, to the team. And we certainly look forward to working with you. I look forward to working with you. Joanne and I had an opportunity to chat today. And she's eager to get started. And if you note that February 18th is actually a Friday. So she's actually coming in on a Friday to get started, setting her office up and making sure her tech works so she can hit the ground running the following week. So that's my report. At this time, I'll entertain any questions, Chair Wilson, any of the Board of Trustees have regarding my report.
I just have one quick comment. The amount of meetings you took this month, impressive again. I don't know where you find the hours in the day, but keep doing it. I'm guessing you have a clone locked in the closet, as we've discussed previously, but whatever works, loving it. I have a question, well, not a question, really, a comment on the library operations. Our Clark County problem child. I noticed 2 year over the 19 over December, 29% decrease in incidents per patron, which very nice after the trends we've been having. How the heck what are we doing right there, and how do we replicate that? Or is it really going to be, most of it goes away now because of the mandate change, and that was the big bulk of our problem?
That was one of the big bulks of the problem. We have been seeing a trend lowering with mask issues. They do still have a number of incidents, but like I said in previous reports, it's not always someone causing a disturbance. A lot of times it could be somebody locked their keys in the car or whatever else it is. But they do still have the larger number or bulk of the disturbances as well, but definitely on a downward trend, and we're hoping to see that.
It
continue.
caught my attention. I just noticed for months, we've been, why do they keep going up? Why do they keep going up? And this was really nice to see this
Yeah.
big reversal compared to a fully open 2019. So that made me happy. Does anybody have any library operations questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
just to follow, Felipe Ortiz, just to follow up on your question, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt McAnally was placed in charge of the pandemic mitigation. Is that correct? And so that would be down the road, this is before Kelvin Watson's time, down the road, whenever the quote "and" is, whatever that's defined as. Matt, Mr. Chair, through you, Matt, are we going to get a end of pandemic mitigation report, just a closure? Is it necessary? Number one, are we going to get one? Do you understand what I'm saying? You were put in charge of dealing with all the issues, I believe, and you had a committee.
Good evening, Chair Wilson, Board of Trustees. Trustee Ortiz, I guess to answer your question, I'm not aware. I think every individual director was responsible for their own respective areas. But if you'd like an end of action mitigation report regarding the community engagement areas, I'd be happy to brief Director Watson and
Okay.
provide that to the board.
Thank you. So Director Watson, just I guess the question's for you. When all this happened, we had to make a lot of tough decisions and move quickly. And, we'll all leave it at one point, this board, maybe something in the file saying how it ended, whenever that end is. It could be today, or it could be whenever you decide, but we need something in the file. Because I believe they use that as a guide when this pandemic happened. The SARS and all the rest of the stuff that happened in the past. Is it clear as mud, or is that?
I get it. I just have a comment, Trustee Ortiz, and that is that this past summer, I believe, our CFO, Foresto Cabayas, provided a report to the board regarding our actions regarding the pandemic, and also gave an update at that time. So if and when the pandemic ends, we certainly can provide a supplement to the information that that Mr. Cabayas provided to the board this past summer.
I guess my request would be a little bit more defined. What worked, what didn't work? Where do we spend our money and that didn't work? Where do we get the most grief? Did it cause more arrest? Did it cause more pain? And
Okay, I think I
So
understand the question. I was a little confused on the mud to begin with. Now I get it.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about money we spent on plastic dividers, extra cleaning services, the
Thank you.
spray downs. Were they actually effective, or was it a waste of money and time? Did we cause angst with the staff for no reason on things that were ineffective? Is that a better?
yes, Mr. Chair, and also we had also asked for reimbursements from the federal government. Did we get those reimbursements? They still don't have an answer.
Yeah,
I don't need an answer.
yeah,
now.
that makes more sense now. Yeah, I get that.
I don't need an answer now.
No,
I think we should excuse Mr. McNally, though. I don't think you were ever put in charge of the whole shebang.
Thank
Maybe
you
I'm
very much. I
wrong.
appreciate that
Thank
excusal.
thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
So that's actually directed to the chair. So yeah.
Mm.
And so if you can incorporate that, we, just, did
I'll
we
take care of
bill? Okay,
I'll take care of it. It's a, what we'll call it for the staff, we'll call it a pandemic after action report.
and I'm not asking for a presentation, just a report in the file.
Got it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kelvin, we had Judge Schember, who was the assistant, prepare an action plan, and that may be what he's referring to. It was what we're going to do and how we're going to attack it. And she prepared all that when this first hit.
yes, I remember that. That's what I think you're remembering, because that's what I remember too. I didn't remember the person that did it, but I remember the plan originally. That makes sense to see what we did or didn't waste money on, or what worked and didn't work. Okay. Anything else on operations, Trustee Ortiz?
No, that's it. Thank you, sir.
Great. Just a quick comment on the marketing, branding and marketing. Just another hats off to seeing 33% open rates on newsletters. Again, 2 in a row for last month. I don't know how the library is getting these kind of open rates. That's just unheard of in email marketing, but hats off to the team that's putting them together. Yay. There's one other thing here before I let everybody else loose that I had a question on. Yeah. Yes, thank you for the reminder. Where's the other one? Okay, anybody else have any other questions while I'm trying to find my note here in this diligent thing where I've lost it? So in the meantime, I'll turn it over to other trustees for questions instead of you all waiting on me, and I'll find where I made my note.
Trustee Rogers, I'll jump in. I just had more of a kudos on the report, just the Best Buy Tech Center, the Teen Tech Center staff, just the robustness of offering 93 unique programs and having over 1,100 teens participate in those various offerings. I think that's commendable and certainly worthy to just give you guys a kudos for all those who were involved in those programming and initiatives.
And
Mr. Chair, was Mr. Vino going to be called forward for a quick presentation on?
yeah, absolutely. Just give me, I think I found mine. There it is.
Okay.
And then I'll turn it over to everybody else. This way I don't have to go back floating through my notes because this diligent thing's a pain in the butt sometimes to find your notes in. I should just print the things out and save the headache. I'm sorry, everyone. To Matt McNally on the year over year statistics on the youth services and adult services programs. Love the numbers, but I'd really like to see them over 2019 again. It's really hard to go on comparisons of the year we were shut down to see how we're doing and how we've recovered moving forward. So obviously you aren't going to have those with you at the moment, but I would really appreciate that the 2019 comparisons get in there wherever we can, so we can gauge off of an open year against an open year going forward.
Sure. Chair Wilson, Board of Trustees, I'd be happy to look at those numbers and brief the executive director. I'll provide those in my report next month.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last one on my list that I wanted to ask about, I know I've got a lot this month. Sherry Walker met with Foundation about capital campaign options. Was there anything of any significance or interest there that the board can help with in any way, or? No? Okay. Okay, there you go. Simple enough answer. Thank you. Okay, I'll turn it over to, who did you want to bring forward, Trustee Ortiz?
Actually, Dr. Rogers asked for John Vino.
Okay, Dr. Rogers, then we'll go back to Dr. Rogers for John Vino.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, I
John
did
Vino.
not want to fail John and all the work that he's done to move this initiative forward. So I did not want to just wing it. I would rather compliment what John's update is on the elements that I've been directly involved and engaged in supporting.
Appreciate it. I'll just give you a quick update on the different areas that we're moving forward with on West Las Vegas. The first one being the program. In my board report, we reported we've pretty much finalized the enumerated square footage for the new program. It's closing out just at under 39,000 square feet, which is actually almost very consistent with East Las Vegas. It's actually more usable square footage than East Las Vegas, but that the final outcome we'll get more in depth when we get into the schematic and the architectural drawings of the actual adjacencies of those areas. It does have very similar. We were able to hold, even within the same square footage, an additional makerspace. We're actually looking at a makerspace suite, which is kind of exciting. So we're working on the actual concepts as we go forward. We have a much clearer picture of what this library can be within the square footage we're working in, what we're trying to accomplish with the different areas, including a business incubation area. So we're as you know, we're moving forward with our community outreach at this time. We've secured February 22nd. We've reached out to everyone and we've compiled a pretty good list of community stakeholders, and we will be meeting and doing presentations to our stakeholders. Again, this is not a lot different than we did at East Vegas. East Vegas, we were introducing a new library. We were introducing ourselves to the community. This is slightly different where we've been in this community for 50 years and a part of the community and a part of the heritage. So our presentation is what we hope to bring to a new library and how we trying to elevate the community. So we needed to be a little further down the road than at East Vegas because we're actually presenting square footage, ideas, concepts, and we're asking them for their feedback on our ideas. What works, what doesn't work, what do you envision based on our presentation? And then a month later, we are having at the theater, we're reaching out to the community. We're going to have radio ads. We're going to do a full-on press for a community meeting. Again, to do a presentation to the whole community on what the library, what we're hoping to create, get their feedback. Well, both meetings will be interactive.
Do you have a date for the March meeting?
The March meeting will be the 21st, 5:30. The other meetings, we have a 2:30, 3:30, and a 5 o'clock. So everybody can pick and choose as so they can come. So we do three presentations in February at the stakeholders meeting and then one large one. And we'll probably do another community meeting once we get down the road and we have real concepts of what a building might look like and what the inside might look like. We'll probably do one more community meeting, another outreach, coming soon, and then a soon to be here type meetings for the community. As of right now, it is our intentions to complete the programming by the end of March and do a full presentation on the programming to the board at our April board meeting. I think we're in good shape for those. In terms of our negotiations with the city, they have agreed to do an MOU for the sale of the property, which will give us what we need to do to bring it forward to the board for your approval. The city, actually, we've been going back and forth. We've confirmed with the city that the current zoning meets our standards, and we will not have to go through a whole rezoning of that property. They've completed their phase 1 geotech. We've been going a little, they've actually offered something, and I did run it by our real estate attorney, that's really to our benefit. We were originally looking to do a ground lease on that property, and just today, after talking to them, they're going to offer us a deed. They'll deed the property to us for, don't have the full terms, for about 100 years, I'm assuming, just as the ground lease would. And they would have a revisionary interest at the end of that term to get the property back, which would have been under the ground lease as well. I think the benefit to us is actually owning the land even and having a deed for us will be, as we move forward with the new market tax credits, being able to say we own the property and show a deed. That really will streamline that process and even keep the city out of it. If they were the leaseholder, now they're involved. So that's we gave them the go ahead to go ahead and structure the new site based on a deed. So that was pretty exciting. That's going to resolve some
pretty happy
issues.
news.
Was that?
That's some like happy news.
Yeah. I mean, I know they're backed up, so it's not going as quick, but they're being really responsive, and I think we're moving forward on those two areas as well. So.
Well, that's always been the downside of the existing facility, is that we didn't own the land. Of course, we're also landlocked and a bunch of other things.
We are, I
but-
think, yeah, that's
yeah.
very true.
Yeah. But
It's,
it was definitely a detriment.
yes.
Trustee Rogers, anything to add in?
Yes, I would just add that we had a very productive meeting on Tuesday with Commissioner McCurdy, and he gave us his endorsement and support that he's on board with the project. And he also gave us some insights, just to be better prepared for the community stakeholder meetings and some questions that might arise. So we're going to be working on refining our responses to those and anticipate what some of those concerns might be from the community. So we'll be prepared there. Also, John and I are going to be working on sharing the presentations that KME and John are using with the different stakeholders so that the board is sort of fully in the loop in terms of all the specifications that are being planned for the facility and other components. And then lastly, in response to some of the other questions, we're going to be putting together a project milestone that we can share that's going to also overlay with the East Las Vegas Library project, so we have better context on where we are timeline wise, from like day 0 to day 60, that we are ahead of schedule, as John said, in many respects when we compare different deliverables from the East Las Vegas project. So that's something that we're going to work on trying to have for the board by the next meeting.
Oh, wonderful, Trustee Rogers. Safe to assume that either you or Trustee Ortiz will be at the stakeholder meetings?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will be.
Awesome.
Yes, they are on my calendar as well.
Cool. And hey, and if you got, it's your show, Trustee Rogers, but if you don't mind me tagging along to silently observe, I'd love to. And if you think I'm going to be in the way, I will follow your lead on that because you're doing a great job with it.
All are welcome.
So, okay, that was what I had. Anything, anybody else have any questions for Trustee Rogers or Mr. Vino on the subject?
Mr. Chair, through you, I do have a question and a request.
Sure thing.
The question is that the orientation, the front door, does it face east or north?
I don't know that we've gotten that far, but our anticipation is going to be a lead building. So the orientation of the building on the lot will be driven by everything from the northern lights to the solar impact. I will let you know as soon as I know.
And the reason for the question is Trustee Foyt was very astute with our enterprise library. I want to make sure this is a request that the address is Martin Luther King and not Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah, nice name, but nobody knows where it's at. So whatever orientation, my request is that the address be Martin Luther King.
Yeah, no, I think that's a given. We also, though, now that you mention it, we've had some talks with possibly having 2 entrances because we want to take in Legacy Park and people
Sure.
coming in from that direction. So we very like Enterprise, as you mentioned, we may very well have 2, may have a main entrance, but an entrance through or a pathway through to Legacy Park. We plan on tying in the design to Legacy Park in some way. We're working on that.
And then the second request is that property is zoned as commercial business. That would be a good opportunity to put a big sign, as big as we can afford. It's a criticism, but nothing we can do today. A lot of our signage is so small, you whiz right by it at 35 miles an hour. So there, it's already zoned for it. They have a big Starbucks sign, a big
Yeah.
McDonald's sign. So whatever the budget can sustain, I would ask that we have a nice big sign, and if it can be illuminated, which also is permitted in that commercial business, what do you call it?
Noted.
Mixed business.
Now, some of our signs are very bland. They
Yeah.
melt away for that.
And one of the conversations we had too is to partner with the city and the county to make it more of a prominent location to really showcase the library and really direct traffic there. So I think that's going to be part of the collaborative plan between us, the city, and the county to make sure that it's an impressive, not just an impressive location, but also just the signage and visibility of it is maximized.
So I hear within that discussion, a future agenda item for the board to maybe discuss whether or not we should be spending money on improving some of the horrible signage.
I would be all for that.
Okay. There you go, Director Watson, you're on notice.
Those-
Anybody else have anything else for Mr. Vino or Trustee Rogers on the subject?
Chair, Jose, this is Jose.
Jose, yes.
No, I
Trustee
was just
Melendez.
with the signage situation. Wasn't that, I know that I think that got kind of put on hold for a little bit, but weren't we kind of already in the process of updating signage and all that and at our locations with all the new marketing stuff and all that?
There was a program to look at, LED signs wherever we could put them. A lot of the libraries being in residential areas, we'd be restricted. But it's been one of the victims of COVID, and we could certainly go back and resurrect that and see where it is and see where we can and update it and bring that back to the board.
Yeah, because I know it wasn't it all supposed to be like a part of the new marketing materials and the new look and all that?
Yeah, it was part of the facilities master plan, but a separate program for
The library district rebranding campaign.
Yes, rebranding
Yes.
inside and out. Yeah.
For anyone who is.
Good memory, Jose. That's been so long, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, because I think we had kind of given the approval for all of that to go forward, but because, COVID took care of that for a little while, but I mean, that, because those were some nice, I mean, that was some nice information and would have had a really nice look to it. So I would say before we move any direction, bring that back and see if everybody, with all the new board members, see if everybody's in agreement with that.
And I think it makes sense before we go building a new branch with wrong signs that we then have to change.
Right.
Good call, Jose. Trustee Foyt.
During the entire time I've been on the board, that's been kind of one of those things that I would run the flag up and down, as some of you have suffered through before. In some cases, without going electronic, like the West Charleston Library, which sits adjacent to the community college or on their property, just some bright paint would help on the existing sign, be it luminous or otherwise, but something to make it stand out, because that's one of those that just, everything is the color of this
It's
carpet.
basically camouflage. That one's the worst. It's basically
It is.
camouflage.
But there are others where you just can't see it. Either the shrubberies have come up, to a certain degree, and I'm not talking just about West Sahara, but can't think of the name of the branch that's off of East Tropicana. Whitney. It's hard. I mean, you're there and gone before you realize you should have turned.
And I think West Charleston, we were going to repair it as part of the problem. It runs parallel to West Charleston.
There's no
And it
angle.
really needs to be, so you
Or
could.
or two parts or something to that.
So we'll look at those and then I'll get back into that with Bam and we'll see what that is.
I appreciate it.
No?
Thank you.
Okay, so anybody else have any questions
Mr. Chair.
on the subject of West Las Vegas?
I would just ask Director Watson if you just make sure that those dates, you share those with, for the community stakeholder and then the.
I'll have Ebony send those out to all of the board members. Both,
Thank you.
all the dates and the location. Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Trustee Ortiz.
thank you. And this is actually for Ebony. I wanted the record to be clear that I had those two requests, just so it doesn't get lost in a minute to say a conversation. No, these are formal requests that we have Martin Luther King address and that we have bigger signage at the West Las Vegas Library. Thank you, Ebony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
One last look around. Any other trustees with any comments, questions on this subject? Okay, thank you, Mr.
you.
Vino. And I anticipate that we will not spend a lot of time on West Las Vegas next month's board meeting because of the two scheduled stakeholder meetings and community meetings to follow. We'll really spend more time again on this in April unless Trustee Rogers comes to me with something other and says, hey, we need to make this a more prominent issue again for more updates. Okay, moving on. Does anybody else have any other reports they would like to call forward at this time? Absolutely.
I just want Jennifer Heron. I would just like to celebrate this beautiful community share project that Matt McNally and his team and Kelvin have been working on. This has, I know, been a lot of work on your end and a labor of love and not easy to move forward, but the children of our school district are benefiting. 45,000 electronic titles have been made available to our children, a gift from the district, from the library district. And I want you to know that your work is well worth it. All the school librarians and CCSD are celebrating this, working hard, training with Baker and Taylor, on the program and Access 360. And it's just a huge celebration for our kids. So I cannot thank you enough on behalf of the community.
Thank you very much for that, Trustee Giron. Okay, on that note, seeing nobody else with any other questions or comments, I will accept the reports. And moving on, unfinished business, I see none, so we will head on to new business. So first up, we have just the housekeeping consent agenda. I'll accept the motion on that unless somebody has anything they want to pull out or discuss on it.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion approved. And moving on to the regular agenda. Let's start on item B1, discussion and possible board action regarding the selection of an auditing firm for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Floresto Cabayas, CFO for the record. The Nevada revised statutes requires the board to designate its auditor for the fiscal year ending 2022. And in December 2021, staff requested proposals from qualified audit firms to perform the audit for fiscal year 2022 of the district's financial statements. There was one firm that responded, Hinton Burdick. It is unusual to receive only one bid for this type of professional services, but it's also understandable given the current market conditions. Other firms that decided not to bid were facing limited staffing capacity, and adding another audit engagement during the district's audit timeframe would have been challenging, at least at a reasonable cost. Our prior year auditors, BDO, indicated that to continue as a district's auditor would require a significant increase in fees from the prior year. But with that said, Hinton Burdick is well qualified to perform the district's audit. The firm has over 100 local government clients in multiple states, including Nevada. Their clients have library operations in some cases, including independent library systems similar to the district. Their proposed budget hours to complete the audit, along with their staffing, is in line with what we would expect based on comparisons with prior year audits. Their fees also appear to be realistic because of their extensive local government auditing experience and their experience with library as an industry itself will give them the advantage of performing the district's audit efficiently. Their fees are also 6% higher than the prior year audit fee, which is still lower than the inflation numbers that were reported earlier this morning. And finally, Hinton Burdick will be a welcome set of fresh eyes on financial services in particular. Although we try to be perfect every year, we understand that there's always room for improvement. And with that, before I turn it over to Dr. Rogers to present the Finance and Audit Committee's recommendation, I can answer any questions.
Just for the record, what was the inflation rate this morning?
About 7.5, 7.6%.
And we're at 6% increase on this?
That's right,
Okay,
Mr.
thanks.
Chair.
Just wanted to get on the record. Thank you. Okay, Trustee Rogers?
Okay, if there are no questions, I'll go ahead and make the motion, Chair. Is that where we are?
That's where we are. Does anybody
All right,
have?
Well, I'll pause until I'm queued up to make the motion from the committee.
Any questions on this one? It's pretty straightforward. I didn't see any. Okay, Trustee Rogers?
Okay, I motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Hinton Burdick for auditing services in accordance with RFP number 22-04 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, for an amount not to exceed $57,200, with options to extend the contract for 4 additional consecutive fiscal years, subject to final review of contract by council.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And just very quickly, I forgot to mention during the reports, I know I showed you that sales tax report from the County Flood District a couple months ago, and it mysteriously showed up in the reports this month. I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, no, you're welcome. I thought that was included in our reports for the last few months, but I'm glad you saw it and it was useful for you.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And okay, on to the next agenda item. Discussion and possible board action to implement the wage analysis compensation recommendations for the administrative team. Mr. Serpico.
Good evening, Chair Wilson, Board of Trustees. We do have on the line this evening, Georg Kramer from Coffin Associates, who will assist and answer some questions if needed. Before I get started, we have a presentation. You're going to hear a lot of terms probably thrown around in the next couple months when it comes to compensation programs and plans. So we wanted to go through a few of the terms you may hear to just give a little clarification. And also the last page of the presentation came out a little light. So for those here, I have a larger copy. Please, you're on your own.
Thank you.
A little bit of background on this item. In February of 2021, the Board of Trustees passed a motion to freeze the annual base salaries and also salary range for the executive council, now known as the administrative team. And that action was done pending a formal compensation wage survey to be done by a third-party consulting firm. One of the primary goals of that evaluation would be to evaluate whether or not the district salaries and pay ranges were competitive, but also too reasonable based on external market conditions. We define the external market as library systems and local government. We went out to RFP on that. And at the June 2021 Board of Trustees meeting, Coffin Associates was selected from, I believe, a group of 6 to perform the wage analysis, a direct wage analysis and indirect wage analysis. Phase 1 would consist of reviewing the administrative team, the base salaries since they had been frozen, and phase 2 would consist of reviewing the entire district. Coffin Associates surveyed 11 different local government agencies and library systems. Those were reviewed by Kelvin Watson and Chair Wilson. Those are listed in the agenda item. So before we get started on reviewing the results of that, direct you to the presentation really quick, just to go over some key concepts and terms. Direct compensation components are your base salary, premium payments, contingent payments as part of incentive plans or bonuses. So when you hear the term direct compensation, it's really your paycheck. Indirect compensation is often called the hidden paycheck. That's your benefits, your health and welfare plans. You've got your mandated plans, Social Security, paid leave plans, vacation, holiday, sick leave, military leave. Some of those are mandated, some are not. We had requested that Coffin Associates survey both of those elements of compensation. Right now, for this purpose of this conversation, we're only looking at the direct compensation of the administrative team, which was in the defined phase 1. The ideal direct compensation program objectives, in addition to being legally defensible, are that they're externally competitive. That means we identify market rates. We can either use a published or a custom survey. In this case, we did a custom survey. We identify benchmark jobs, which are jobs that are similar across different organizations or sectors. Director, executive director is a good example. Comparable organizations in terms of FTEs and industry sector. We adjust for geographic employment costs. I believe somebody raised this concern back in February that we would adjust for geographic costs, which we did. And then you survey key data points. Common and private sector is surveying the midpoint. More common from Coffin Associates was surveying the maximum or top step for public programs. And then they'll do summary statistics for that, break it into a median, different percentiles, so you can kind of get an idea where we stand in terms of the market. Another element, objective of the plan is to be internally equitable. That means we make comparisons among people in the same job, and we look at how long they've been with the organization or tenure, or the experience and skills they have. And then we also make comparisons among different jobs, and we look at the knowledge, skills, and abilities, industry practices, and the level of responsibility. Overall, this is, I don't know why it did that, but overall, this is called the job evaluation process. Right now, we're really at the bottom in terms of phase 1. We've done a job worth hierarchy, and we're going to look at a proposed pay salary structure. The rest of it is up top. You can see that COF went through. They collected our job documentation. They collected labor market data. They evaluated those jobs. They had a meeting with Director Watson and myself, and we went through and talked about some internal and external equity concerns. That drafted a job worth hierarchy and resulted in a proposed pay scale for the administrative team. A few of the terms you'll hear thrown around: pay structure, pay range, pay grade. Those are sometimes used interchangeably, but a pay structure does consist of pay ranges or grades. The pay grade is usually a numerical or alphanumeric reference to a minimum, midpoint, and maximum. The purpose of the grade numbers is just to refer to what range you're referring to. Minimum, midpoint, and max. These are in compensation programs, typically reference points. The minimum of the pay range represents the lowest rate you're willing to pay for a job. Usually that's somebody with low experience or somebody who just meets the minimum qualifications. The midpoint is very big in private sector to use. It's the middle value, usually represents a fully competent individual. Professional jobs, that's usually 4 to 6 years of experience. And the maximum represents the highest rate you're willing to pay for the job. Sometimes in public sector, you hear the maximum called the top step or top rate. The rate is typically set 10 to 15% or 22 or also 22.5% higher than the midpoint, or 30, 45, or 60% above the minimum. This is the key reference point utilized by COF when they surveyed the pay structures of the 11 organizations, which is common in many government entities. Range spread, you'll hear a lot about. It's the width of the range. It's the difference between the maximum and the minimum divided into the minimum. Right now, the district has about a 65% range spread, which is just huge for this sector. Typically, you see 30 to 45%, and you'll see that that's actually a little piece of the proposed salary structure. And I just included the little formula for calculating that at the bottom. Point progression is the difference between key pay range reference points, minimum, midpoint, maximum, as the pay grades increase. So between grade 1 and 2, the difference between the minimums is 5%. These are key points because it helps you, assists you in setting your promotional increase amounts when people move up the range to see what's actually meaningful. And I just included the calculation for that there. Compa ratio is a very useful statistic. It's simply a measure that expresses current pay rates or current minimums, midpoints, or maximums as a percentage of range midpoints or other key reference points such as maximums. So what you're doing in a lot of cases is you're dividing the maximum into what we see the market 90th percentile is or 50th to see where we stand in terms of the market. Compa ratios are kind of like channel markers. You want to stay to the left or right based on which percentile it is. You'd want to stay to the left of the 90th and usually around the 50th, which is considered around market. Where the range maximum is utilized as the key market reference point, which was how we did this study. The ratio of the employee's actual salary or the maximum indicates whether the employee is paid below, at, or above market rates. The ratio of an employee's actual salary to the range maximum can also assist in determining whether compensation rates are reasonable and not excessive. So you wouldn't want your individual rates or your maximums to exceed that 90th percentile. You ideally want them clustering closer to that 50th percentile. Just some different lingo. You'll see types of salary increases. There's general increases, which are designed to make sure employees' pay keeps pace with the labor market. Those are often done as COLAs. Everybody would be eligible for a COLA. And private sector, a lot of times you'll see a market adjustment, which may be done for just specific jobs. These increases are also done in addition to the within range increases, which are designed to move employees forward in their assigned pay range. Two types of those are merit increases, which are typically performance driven, and then step increases, which are typically based on time in the grade. In addition, there's promotional increases, and there's a note there that, you know, the magnitude of the promotion, that point progression, can sometimes drive what the policy is on increases. These are just some of the terms that'll come up in the next several months as we start bringing the data forward and the recommendations. You're going to move, you have the job evaluation sheet in front of you, which is the last slide. These are the pay ranges. Section A, recommended by Coffin Associates. They went through and looked at all our positions and designed a pay structure. Section B is our current administrative team pay ranges. You'll see there's only two. There's one for the executive director, and all of the other directors were put in one pay range with a maximum of 188,846. If you move over to C, you'll see the median of the market maximums and the 90th percentile of the market maximums across those 11 organizations, and the dollar difference between our maximum and those numbers. So you'll see that line 1, library operations, the median maximum in the market is 143.3. The 90th percentile is 174.5. Our maximum is 188, which is about 45,000 above the median and about 14,000 below the maximum. So we want to start tracking a little bit closer to that other buoy, so to speak. That rationale follows straight down the salary structure. Where you see green, they're actually a little bit below, but it's fairly minor. I'm going to switch to the next slide. Let me go to this slide here. Oh, this slide here. Why don't we go to our final sheet? I can track. The other slides are notes on presentation.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'd prefer you go back to those slides and just touch on them a little bit for the record, just because of.
I'm going to touch on them, but I need to go through this sheet first,
Gotcha.
if that's okay.
Sure.
Because it'll make more sense then if
yes,
they were added afterwards as a
gotcha
thing. In front of you, you've got a sheet with 2 columns. Columns 1 and 2 are the title the district utilizes and whether or not COF saw that as a benchmark job title, and they all were. Column 3 is the current incumbent's salary for that role. Column 4 is the current maximum. These are the ones that were frozen. Current maximum for the Las Vegas, Clark County pay range. And column 5 is taking that current maximum and dividing it into the 90th percentile. That's a compa ratio. Where it goes over 100%, it could be seen as a little bit high. We'd want to start moving those back down below 100%. Column 6 is the market data. These are the median and 90th percentile rates of all the maximums for those top steps for those organizations surveyed. When we initially sat down and looked at this, discussing with COF, what would be a way to begin to bring our salaries and our maximums back down towards the median, get them to track a little bit closer. What would be a guideline they would suggest to do that? They said we may want to look at a median plus 10% guideline, which is take the median for the job, add 10% to it, and as long as it's below the 90th percentile, we use that as a guideline. So as you move across to column 8, you'll see what that number is, median plus 10%. When we compare that median plus 10% to the 90th percentile, remember we want to be below 100% and ideally begin tracking it a little bit back. You'll see that that does fall all below 100%. Then we take that number. This was part of the meeting that we had with COF and Director Watson. We look at the pay ranges and we consider internal relationships, the external market, and we slot those jobs into the pay grades of the proposed structure that was built. You can see the new proposed maximum, because it's not exact, is right next to there. And with one exception, they all fall within that 90th percentile. Based on internal relationships, we did move community engagement up. It's only 3% above, but remember we've got 7.5% inflation, this year, and we're probably going to see the wage market move anywhere between 5 and 10%. I'll move to that slide in a second. You can see the incumbent rate to proposed maximum that they're below. And then you see the proposed maximum under the new salary schedule or pay grades that have been recommended by COF versus what we currently have, which was frozen. And you can see for the majority, those have gone down. we've reduced the maximum pay rate, and that maximum pay rate for that group is reduced to 174 to 12. Now I'm going to track back to the other slide. If we assume the wage market moves maybe 5% this year or last year and 5% next year, 3% years after, although I have a feeling it's going to move a little bit more, you'll see the median, the current median of the market intersects our new maximum where you see it turn green. So it'll take about 2 years for most of the jobs to catch up with the market or to actually come more in line with the market. The other roles is about 5 years to bring them more in line with market unless we see the market move more aggressively. This slide does a comparison of if things were left alone under our current pay structure and people continued to progress based on what's scheduled versus us putting in the proposed and people begin to max out and also consider paying lump sums. Georg, would you like to say a few words about the use of lump sums in public sector?
Sure, happy to. One of the questions that comes up when a person, an employee or incumbent nears the top of the salary range, especially as you are trying to adjust as what Jeff has been presenting, sort of recalibrating your salary structure to be more in line with the market. There will be some individuals, some current employees who are going to hit the top of the salary range, which technically means that they are what we call topped out and don't have further salary increases to receive. In order to ensure, number one, talent retention, number two, a method of recognizing performance and merit, paying a lump sum bonus that is not an actual salary raise, so a dollar amount that doesn't get added to the base salary is one way in the public sector to reward and acknowledge individuals for their contributions. And it's something we see quite commonly in the public sector. There are some limitations in terms of what agencies are able to do with compensation. You obviously aren't able to offer, stock option packages and other, 50, 60, 100% bonuses that you might see in the private sector. And so these, what we call non-base building, so not increasing the salary, but these lump sum bonuses are one way in the public sector to, again, recognize and reward individuals.
Thank you, Georg. In this chart, you'll see where the salary turns red. That means they've maxed out. So at that point, it freezes. You'll see the CIO maxing out fairly quickly, branding and marketing. Yellow is just an indicator that their base rate is above the median. You'll see several don't max out till year 5. Took a look at the cost, the total salary dollars, plus the cost of the lump sum, subtracted out the incremental difference from the original pay structure, the additional PERS contribution, and you'll see the comparison there based on the 2 different pay plans. Pretty even until year 3. Then it begins to decrease where the new plan is cheaper than the old plan. Simple table of what the lump sums would be in the next 5 years. Let me go back one more slide. To get us to this place, you'll see in the agenda item, the recommendation is made that if we do adopt this new salary structure as recommended, we freeze it for 24 months. And that's going to allow us to track farther towards that middle buoy and bring our maximums more in line with the medians of the market. Again, though, when you look the individual pay rates, nobody went over that 90th percentile. I think the board froze it at the right time so we could do this study. We'll move on to, okay, any questions on the sheet? On the
Do we want just the sheet at this point or
Just-
broader questions of the presentation?
Broader questions are fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may have missed it here, but, and I'm sure it's in there, but just to get it more clearly on the record, the ratio spread, what is the new proposed ratio spread under their plan?
34%.
34,
Actually,
okay,
yeah, it's more.
If you could, I remember when we froze this and a big contention in the freezing, it is the way the scales were structured. They kept the structures were staff would get COLA increases, merit increases, plus a scale increase that was just kind of like all automatic. So the scale would go up and then your merit would go up within that scale. And it effectively made like a never ending, no way to top out with the maximum the way that was designed. What is it about this new proposed plan? Or maybe actually, if you could better explain that for the three new trustees that weren't here back when we froze the things in the first place, help them understand what brought us to that point of freezing them and what were the concerns with that? Because I'm not doing justice explaining the hopping scales.
It's okay. I think the concern was, and remember, I was fairly new when I came out and saw this, was that the range maximums in our range seemed a bit high. I mean, you're looking at six figures salaries. There were PERS concerns. And I think the previous salary and wage survey had been done 6 years ago. And what seemed to be happening, at least over the last couple of years, was there were COLAs being done fairly consistently. You may not see a COLA done every year. It usually has to do with how far the market's moved. So COLA and merits are two different things. So your merit, you would usually see every year at an organization, usually 3%. In a lot of organizations, that helps you keep up with the market too. I mean, CPI years ago had been reported at 1.5 per year, 1.8. We seemed to be doing quite a few COLAs right after one after another and moving the salary range also at the same time. So I think that had a cumulative effect of moving things probably a little bit faster than this market moved. And I think that's basically what happened. You were looking at average over 5 years, I want to say, of over 5% increases, and the market didn't move that fast. So every time a COLA was done, move the salary range. Most of the time when you do a COLA, you do have to move the salary range to keep the equity relationships. But again, every year a COLA may not be warranted. Private sector, we did a lot of market adjustments, and we maybe did a COLA every 2 or 3 years. And it wasn't necessarily 3%. It could have been 2% or 1%. That was probably how our ranges got a little bit high. And then to my understanding, there was a decision made so many years ago to put all of the directors in the same grade. You normally don't see that. I mean, there's different market rates for those. They get paid different. You'll see CIO has been a hot job since before 2000. CFO usually tracks a little bit higher than those. And I think you'll see that in this recommendation. So part of what you'll see in the recommended actions is if we do accept the salary structure, and remember, this is just for the administrative team, to freeze it for 24 months. And then at the end, I'm not talking about freezing the base rates, but freezing the structure. And then see where we're at in 24 months. My hunch is, and we've discussed this, is going to move 5 to 10%. We saw inflation come in at 7.5. These numbers typically lag a little bit because people are reporting survey data, and then it gets submitted to the different organizations and the numbers crunched. But to answer your question, I think we were probably doing COLAs for this group when they didn't necessarily need to do them, and moving the pay structure also. One of the things you'll see in the recommended actions is that on an annual basis, Director Watson would make a recommendation as to what he wants to do with his team in terms of merit and COLA, and we would base that on market information. And also, this group would be separated. It seems like we had been doing whatever we did under the CBA, and you've got a group negotiating a CBA, and then they're subject to the same pay increases, which is a conflict of interest.
A few more questions on it. And again, just to try and dumb it down and for me as much as possible, because as a private sector guy, when I want more money, I just had to work more. I didn't get to give myself a pay scale structure. It was other than a nice dream. I support making sure we really pay our people well to retain the best, because it's the only way we're going to give the best service to the community. So that's a priority to me personally, but is it fair characterization to say that under the old system with these de facto COLA increases and a moving pay scale, plus a merit pay, which to my understanding, the merit pay was really more of a longevity pay, more so than merit and the way they were being handed out.
It's a fair assessment. It's all or nothing. So yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was the merit pay and COLA as a percentage of what they make on the pay scale, and the pay scale is going up every year with it, effectively making their 5%, I'm picking a number out of the air, was really 5% of a bigger number that kept going. And that's what was causing this acceleration of pay ahead of market.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time a COLA was done, the structure, I mean, there was a deduction for PERS, but the structure would move that amount. If you're doing COLAs when they're not necessarily warranted, then yeah, you're inflating the pay structure. And I think we see that.
Okay. The PERS reduction. Could you touch on what is responsible for that PERS reduction?
The incremental difference of the salaries being maxed out and they're stopping, rather than that difference between let's go back.
Okay, so it's not related to the lump sum payments, not counting against the PERS kind of thing. It's
No,
actually to
the
salary
PERS,
structures.
the lump sum payments would not be PERS eligible. But if you allowed people under the current to continue to go to say 188 rather than stopping at 174, that incremental difference, the 29% on that is that additional amount that would be paid.
Couple more questions. If we were to approve this pay scale today, we're only dealing with direct pay. How far out is the information on the indirect that's not known to us? In other words, we're about to vote on, here's your salary, right, to bring it in line with the market. What happens if with the indirect part comes back and we find out we're way out of whack on the market, either too high, too low, whatever the case is?
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
This is just base compensation.
Right. I know this is just the base, and that's the next part, indirect, when we get to it. So what happens when that indirect part of the survey comes in and we find out we're way out of whack there? Do we have to go back and readdress the direct at that point? I don't imagine people will be real happy with it if it has to adjust in a downward fashion because the indirect was too high. Or do we move the indirect, and are we going to have the ability to adjust the indirect in a way to put that in balance too?
What you would do in that case, you kind of treat them separately. I mean,
Right.
there's a thing called total compensation, but we're not really doing that.
Well,
here.
I know when I go on the state, I know when I go on, OpenGov or whatever the
Yeah.
website is, and I go look up the salaries of everybody that works here, I don't see what their annual salary is. I see that John Smith cost the taxpayer X
Right.
dollars, and they're
Right.
telling me the whole number. Right. So that's what the taxpayer's looking at.
Yeah, what we would do is we'd start to look at those programs, and if they're way above market, how do we, again, we're pumping the brakes here, remember?
Right.
Market begin to meet with the salaries. We'd look at what plans we needed to pump the brakes on and adjust from there. We don't have that data back. We're probably a couple months from bringing that forward. We'll be doing the same type of a process for the direct with all of the staff. And then we'll be doing comparisons with the benefits plans or the indirect. And that'll give us an idea in terms of time off plans, sick pay, the auto allowances in there also. Is that a typical thing you see? And we'll see how those fall out in terms of our competitors.
And when you say we're probably a couple of months out, is that we're talking, like seeing this back here again in April for that indirect part?
Georg, about how far out do you think we are on the rest of the survey, phase 2, which is that?
Well, in terms of the data collection and gathering the data and generating reports, we're probably a few weeks out. Beginning of March is what I would expect to deliver those surveys to you, Jeff, and then have those internal meetings that we've had before with your director and you and us to come up with some strategies and preparing a presentation to the board. So I would expect that probably in April, we would be able to come back to the board with the indirect pay.
Okay. Thank you for that. One thing here that I noticed with the freeze on the pay ranges for the 24 months and to give the time for the market to catch up. I see that we have recommended that the base changes for COLA and whatever else the director comes back to the board every year. What are we going to do at the end of this 24-month freeze?
We'll survey the market again for these positions and see how the inflation has impacted the pay ranges.
Okay, and when we do these market surveys, will the ranges start moving without the board approval, or will it be coming back to the board?
No, we will bring the compensation plan to the board. It's a policy.
Right.
It should be reviewed and just like this every year. Maybe not every year.
No,
It's
like every
COLA,
2
but
years seems
yeah.
reasonable to me to go
Yeah.
look at the market as a whole every 2
Right.
years.
Yeah, we ran about a 24-month cycle in healthcare, but we budget everything ahead of time, and then you're working a year behind. So.
Okay, yeah, I would feel better if this motion felt specifically spelled out that the pay ranges are what they are for the next 48 months versus they're froze for 20, it's just a wording thing, but I think Kelvin and I talked about this. I feel better knowing that they're frozen, not frozen. We're setting them for 2 years, and then in 2 years, we'll get a market survey. And if we're going to move them, we'll decide it at that time. I don't like the grayness of how this is personally. But another point I want to bring up here is one of the things we're discussing in here is lump sum payments. And also, from my understanding, this recommendation is to go back retroactively to when we froze last year and get everybody what they missed out on from last year. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fairness to the leadership team here.
And I don't know if this is a question better for you, Director, or better for you, Mr. Serpico. That being said, that the recommendation and the intent is to retroactively catch them up, which I personally don't have a problem with. I really, once we agree on what the plan is there any harm or any downside to, since we're only 2 months away, waiting until we have the indirect report back so we as a board can see the total package and the total cost that we're going to have to justify representing to the taxpayer? Since I think pretty much everybody here would agree the cost of living increases are reasonable to go back retroactively anyways. Is there any harm in that or any problem in that, Director, Mr. Serpico?
Well, Georg can jump in. I don't think that what we get back on the indirect is going to impact this recommendation that much. This is really.
No, but it might impact how the board feels about voting on this recommendation.
That's true. But when you're looking at terms and things of staying competitive in the market and retaining talent, you're not pulling that in for this. This kind of stands alone for base salary. So you're not going to subtract out from the market, the value of a benefits plan. This is the base salaries that have been surveyed in the market. Other organizations are offering similar benefits. Some may be more generous, some may be less generous, but this kind of moves on its own.
No, I have no doubt that what it is meant to be competitive, and we want it to be. I can only speak for me. I'll let the rest of the board chime in here in a second.
I'll chime in
If you could, Director.
So I would say that to my administration team, who has worked with me over the past year, that we move forward tonight if possible. That's what my recommendation would be for the motivation of my team and the work that they've been doing, leading the staff and the programs and services. We've talked about the reporting, the kudos that were given. I think that it would be appropriate to move forward and demonstrate that support to my team.
Okay. 1 second before I just so I can wrap up my thoughts before the rest of the trustees move forward. On that note, I would stand by that. I personally would feel more comfortable seeing the total number, but with the commitment that I'm in complete support and intend to vote on retroactively putting it in as recommended on whatever we decide to do. But I would like to see the full number myself. I'd feel better about that. On that note, I see, I'm going to turn over to the rest of the board. I see Trustee Foyt has a comment.
Mr. Serpico, you mentioned something just in passing and the little red flags went up all around me because I will not vote, and we have voted in the past against any auto allowances. Why did you mention it?
Because we were surveying it and that was discussed, that we would survey to see if that was a typical benefit offered for these positions. It became such a point of contention as a perk an additional benefit.
It was
for
a
this
very
team.
hidden benefit that never surfaced at the board. We practically had to extract it out of someone's body.
Mm.
And I don't want to ever go down that road again.
Okay.
We also didn't speak about educational incentives that we give to individuals who work for the district, who then are allowed to move across steps and
They're looking at tuition assistance as part of the survey, the benefits survey.
I believe we already have tuition assistance.
I'm not following your question then, trustee.
So if I may, if we pay for a master's degree,
Right.
it bumps them up 2 or 3 steps.
No,
correct?
it doesn't. No, they may be eligible to promote into a whole new job, but it's not a step plan where if you
Or
get this
merit,
degree.
okay.
Merit is performance driven. It's completely performance driven. The only thing that's a little different about our merit is it's all or nothing. It's not a merit matrix, which you might say.
And both merit and base and bonuses do not go into purse contributions.
Merit does because it adds to your base rate, but if you paid a bonus as a separate lump sum, it would not.
What makes the merit all or nothing?
Apparently when
Is it
prior to-
policy or some law that we have to follow for the
it's
state?
policy right now, and I believe it's part of the CBA.
Okay.
And that CBA is, we've got another year left in it.
And merit though is one time. Am I correct?
One time a
Oh,
year.
per
yes.
year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know what you're talking about. Certain step plans have, when you get the degree, you accelerate.
Mhm.
We don't have that. That's very typical at like the VA and organizations like that.
Okay.
If
And
the rest
remember,
of the trustees don't
no
mind, I'm sorry,
auto
trustee
allowances.
Foyt.
Sorry.
Trustee Foyt, if I can, just for a second, I wanted to do something that I forgot to do. We have 3 new board members here that weren't present for when this got froze. So before we go down everybody's questions and comments, I'd like to specifically get the 3 new board members. If any of them have any questions or anything that needs to be clarified on how we got here in the first place last year.
You know, with my meeting with Kelvin the other day, I think I asked my questions and had them answered. So I feel comfortable with what.
Trustee
any
Wah,
questions
trustee Turner?
I would say for myself that kind of, I think what's been surprising to me is how kind of out of, I guess, touch the previous compensation plan was comparatively to organizations that I'm familiar with. So, I mean, I asked my questions to Director Watson, and seeing these recommendations seem pretty on par with organizations that I've been familiar with working with over the years. So it looks all good to me.
Okay, and I can't see the screen anymore, so I don't know if trustee Turner.
I'm here, but I don't have any questions.
Okay, then, thank you. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that the 3 of you were fully up to speed before.
I
the
really
discussion went any
appreciate
further.
that.
Okay,
Chair.
then back on that, note, I'm sorry, trustee Foyt. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I forgot I meant to do that first.
I already had my evening tirade. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. First of all, for the record, the reason we're here is because I asked this as an agenda item. The reason I asked for an agenda item because I believe in transparency. And what was happening, there was no transparency. When I asked 2 directors and a 3rd director, how do we get here? The answer was, as a matter of public record, they said it. Jerry Welty, attorney, was present. For those of you that were not on the board, that's how we did it before. That is not, that's unsatisfactory. So first of all, congratulations. Thank you. This is a first step on transparency and really addressing a payroll that was getting out of control. Because all they did was move the goal line, and that's unacceptable. Unacceptable for the taxpayer who's paying for this, unacceptable to the other employees, right? So having said that, that's how we got here. I do have some concerns. Actually, I'll go down the list. Number 1, I don't like retroactivity, and I won't support that because we had a year of pandemic where either we did work or we didn't work. And my understanding is we did not work as hard, and the numbers show that we did not work as hard. Okay, so giving somebody money for, we paid people 3 months, if I remember correctly, to stay home. I'll say it again, we paid the administrative staff to stay home. They already had their retroactivity. So an issue of fairness, I would not want it to be retroactive. And Mr. Director, or Mr. Watson, that's what I said about the previous union contract, and I'll say that for the administrative staff. So I don't believe in retroactivity on this particular version. Next, we talk about employees. We want to select the best. So some of our employees end up being the best and moving into these positions. But then they stay there till they get their high 3 and leave. So then we're tasked with paying them out 200, 300,000 when they leave. And we owe them the money and we should pay them the money. But I guess the bigger question is there a way when they move to an administrative position that their accumulation of leave, that there's an end to that? In other words, they have to use it or lose it, because the way I understand, they never take a vacation, so they end up with 400,000 payroll to leave when they leave.
Trustee Ortiz.
I'm not asking for a question.
Trustee Ortiz, can I tag on to your question there if you mind? Actually with a question that to go with your thing?
If I can continue.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Is that the indirect? Is that exactly what Trustee Ortiz is talking about? Does that fall under the indirect?
That would be indirect, and they are looking at maximum accrual rates for the vacation and sick. So yes, sir.
Okay, so that ties back into exactly why I want to see the whole number. Go ahead, Trustee Ortiz. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, because it just, I don't begrudge them. I'd like to leave with $400,000 too. Of course, it's unhealthy not to take vacation time, but it's an individual choice. So that's a concern. The other concern is that we have the director in here. And my understanding, Jerry, this is for you. That's something that we do yearly for the director. We have a minimum and a maximum, but we don't have, how could I say this? The director is actually taken out of this compensation plan and given a separate compensation plan. Is that correct, Jerry?
Well, he's by contract, so yes.
So the question for you, Mr. Cervical, is putting them in here, does that tie us and remove the board from making that decision?
It does not.
No.
The board would still approve that. This is just checking Director Watson with the administrative team. His position was surveyed also to make sure that it was reasonable and what the market's range should be for that role. But the board would do his evaluation, recommend any COLA. Obviously, we can provide wage data if that's needed, and then any merit increase. The agenda item tonight just specifically deals with the administrative team minus Director Watson.
Sorry, Mr. Welt, did I miss anything on that? Jerry?
No, that's still solely within your purview regarding Kelly.
And he's going to get a raise if I can help, but I've just a question. Don't want that taken away from the board here by adding it to this compensation plan. So a couple last things. Do these employees that you presented here today, administrative employees, they get a merit increase and a step COLA increase like everybody else?
That's correct for the next 2 cycles. And then is when we would come back with a recommendation of 3%. Do we need to do a COLA? Do we not on an annual basis? Yes.
Okay. And that's really important to me, because if I'm a $70,000 employee, $78,000 employee getting 3%, that's much different than a $187,000 employee getting a 3% raise, right? It's a whole different, it's a larger amount.
Right.
So it's an issue of fairness, right? It's an issue of fairness, right? And so some of these positions, they all are doing a great job. Don't misunderstand me. Let me repeat that again. Everybody's doing a great job. It's just that we have a responsibility, because this is all public record, to make sure that we justify the increases, because people will come back at, and I'm willing to take the heat if I vote on this, but people look at, this is where the rubber meets the road, if I can use an old adage, what people look at, and they don't care what we tell them, that you weren't here and you didn't get your raise, and they don't care about that. So it's really important that we do this right. So lastly, so again, just to repeat, this is very, very good, very helpful. And I'm so glad after I've been 10 years on the board that we finally get to see this. The only other question that I have was, what's the max on educational incentives?
For the tuition for education assistance, I believe it's 2,000 a year, I believe.
Okay, so
that's being surveyed also to see where we stand in terms of comparing.
So for me, that's, if our goal is to make and help people become the best of the best, if there is a need for them to finish their education, it's going to cost them more than $2,000. I would be more open to giving them more money toward the educational cost because we benefit. I'm not sure that we can do that here, but that would be my request, that we be more open to pay for the whole boat if we can, as opposed to giving them a salary increase. So there's got to be a give and take. Or do we pay for life insurance for these employees, excluding the executive director?
Well, you normally wouldn't tie that into the merit or the base salary recommendation. You'd compare those plans to what your competitors are offering. Other government agencies, do they provide 1 times life, 2 times
Okay, but
life?
it's still an expense. Do we pay life insurance policy?
We pay 2 times, I believe, up to 200,000, I believe. I'm not sure on that number, but I can
I
forward
think
it.
there's life insurance through PERS also.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure. I'd
Yeah,
have
I'm
to-
pretty sure.
So that's also an opportunity for us to, maybe they don't get the car allowance, but it's an opportunity to increase that
Yeah.
percentage, because everybody can, well, the family will benefit from it,
Yeah.
right?
It's-
And hopefully everybody's healthy here.
Yeah.
Or there's other compensations out there where the city of Las Vegas, for example, they have, I believe it's $2,500 in medical. You send in your receipts, they reimburse you for your pharmacy, for your gym, and it's an added bonus.
So they fund your spending account for.
You got
that's
it. And so take a look at that. I know you haven't done that here, but maybe in the future, see if we can do that so that we want to make sure that these employees have a good take-home pay, but we also want to make sure that it's within budget, right? So that's the key. Lastly, I would agree with the chair. I'm not sure that we're prepared tonight to vote, and then I would prefer a 36-month and then relook at that again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, I have a couple things if I might.
Absolutely, Mr. Welt.
One, just a reminder, you're entering into a collective bargaining agreement negotiation period now. So keep in mind at these open meetings, when you start offering suggestions as to what we want to do or not do, I know we are doing it in non-represented sort of employees, but that is coming up, and that some of those conversations will best be had with Scott Abbott and Mr. Serpico as we enter into those negotiations. And then Jeff, I had a question. The bonuses you're talking about, those are on a year-by-year basis to be determined. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So because you just mentioned it again, this one's stuck in me on the CBA and the merit increase being fixed. What I'm understanding, these positions aren't under the CBA, right?
These are non-represented positions.
Okay, so we don't need to have a fixed merit increase going forward. We can have a scaled merit increase for this group without any effect on it.
Yeah.
I just don't like the all or nothing thing. And I was like, okay, this isn't CBA, and that seems half baked to me to have an all or nothing. The director should have something more than you get the Rolls Royce or you get the stick.
I agree.
There should be something in the middle at the director's direct friend. Let's go down the line on who we have here. Trustee Raymaker.
My concerns are the same as I do not like retro. I'm still concerned with the way that they can keep continuing with their vacation and everything and move it with them as they go. I think that needs to be, a limit somewhere. I've never been in favor of just an automatic merit. Merit's got to be done on merit. I mean, this idea of this, oh, well, I'm going to get a merit, I'm going to get a step, I'm going to get a COLA, I'm going to get all these things is not what I would approve. So that's just my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Raymaker. Trustee Rogers.
I mean, I've been through this quite a few times with different organizations, and I want to commend the team for putting this together. I think it's sound, I think it's sustainable, and I think it's a measured approach to get us in alignment with where we need to be. I think a lot of the concerns that are being raised by the board are probably left for a different conversation. I think we're talking about more of the indirect components versus the direct salary component. And so I just want to make sure we keep our eyes on the prize, that we're talking about the direct component right now. And the indirect, I think there'll be an opportunity to voice opinion and positions there. And I would say, just regarding the retro, I'm not opposed to the retro. If our past practice has been to keep COLA and merit consistent with what has been done with the CBA, then we should stick to that plan until we look at a policy to deviate from that as a percentage. So if the CBA, if the employees under the CBA got a retroactive COLA and merit at whatever percent, then I think that the administrative team should be treated the same if that's what has been done in the past. And I think that if we're proposing to deviate from the CBA agreement moving forward in terms of how we recognize COLA and merit for the administrative team, then that needs to be a different conversation.
Yeah, the folks under the CBA were never frozen. They received their COLA and merit, the 18 last year, and then 2021, and the 18 was frozen.
Jeff,
And that's what I was gonna-
are we talking about having the administrative team execute contracts then? Because if they're not going to be tied directly into the CBA as they have been, then we need some other document establishing exactly under what conditions they're working.
Yes, that would be ideally, we would go back to contracts. That's a conversation in the future with yourself and Scott and a whole different presentation. But yes, ideally, we would come out from under the CBA, because we shouldn't be negotiating it and then subject to the same.
I'm confused. They're not under the CBA right now.
Right.
I don't understand. Forgive my ignorance, but I don't understand what the CBA has to do with it. If they want to be under the CBA, there's jobs to be under the CBA.
Right.
Part of working up the ladder is to be outside of that. And that's why you get the big pay scale.
I think at some point, our pay program became tied to the CBA as a matter of practice. I think what Council Welt is talking about is doing individual employment contracts, not collective bargaining agreement contracts with the administrative team.
Maybe Council Welt can chime in on why he believes we need individual contracts for at-will employees.
Well, first of all, to state that, and we had them all along up until one executive director who decided we didn't need it. But my recollection is the CBA agreement actually says that the administrative team or executive council will be entitled to the same benefits as indicated in the CBA, which is why that's sort of sloughed off there. So if you're making changes for the administrative team and making limits, then we need to have that in writing, and we need it clear that they are indeed at-will employees.
Oh, well, I can understand having a policy for the executive team. I don't get the CBA. If they're under the CBA, then they're under the CBA. And
No,
I don't
they're
know why
not
we're
directly
talking about them at all.
Right. Right. And I think you'll see in this agenda item too, it's the 21 and 22 that's tied to what's going on current practice. After that, we're out from that linkage, and then we determine what we want to do with the merit and everything else on an annual basis. I'm used to a little bit different of a process that would get presented to the board. Where are they at in the market? What should the merit be? Should there be a market adjustment or COLA? What does that add up to being presented? But we're probably about, we've got the 21, 22 to deal with, and then in 23, we move in that direction.
Okay, yeah, because what I'm hearing here is basically our opinion's really irrelevant because we have to do what we have to do because the CBA says that we have to do what we have to do for people that aren't under the CBA.
No,
I know
not
I'm
for the-
exaggerating it and going to the
Yes.
extreme, and I'm taking it to the extreme on purpose. But that's just what I'm saying. To me, it's absurd to have any tie to the CBA on employees that aren't under the CBA. And I think that needs to go away the very instant we can. On that note,
and I did not finish my point when
Trustee, that's why I was coming back to you, Trustee Rogers.
Other questions brought up during my comment. My
Yes.
final comment is for the retroactive component is that we have to remember as a board, we made the decision to pause COLA and merit while we went through this process because there was some lack of clarity or transparency. So I don't think that the administrative team should be negatively impacted because we decided to pause to get this report. So I would strongly support the recommendation for it to be retroactive back to the point to where we paused it to get this information.
Very good point. Thank you, Trustee Rogers. Do you have anything else?
That concludes my comment.
Great, thank you. Trustee Melendez.
Well, first I'm going to say there's a lot to think about here. Thank you to Director Cervical for presenting this information. I think based on how Trustee Rogers just summed it up, I think I would agree with his comments on this. And I definitely would look at, until the point that we paused it, definitely would look at the retroactivity going into place based at the time that we paused this. So other than that, I think, do we need to have, and I don't know if it'd be a special meeting or something, I hate to throw another meeting on everybody, but do we need to have a more in-depth conversation beyond what's going on tonight? Because, or, with more explanation, more scenarios or options, or there's a lot of different things that have been thrown around tonight. And and if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm kind of like, wow, trying to sum it all up or take it all in one place is a lot. So that's kind of where I am right now, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Melendez. Trustee Drawn. Circle back now.
Yeah, well, I really want to echo what Trustee Melendez said. It is a lot of information, and new to the board, it's a lot to absorb, and a lot of different points of view being brought up, a lot of things that need to be considered. And, I really appreciate what Trustee Rogers said. I think that the fact that the board made the decision, this is before my time, obviously, but the board made the decision to freeze. I feel as if going back retro would be what's fair. In my opinion, but I definitely feel like more discussions. For me, I just need to absorb some more information and really be more educated on what I'm talking about here.
Thank you.
Take a vote.
Trustee Wah.
So based on what I've kind of been gleaning, where a lot of the confusion comes from is the indirect stuff. So we're talking about the vacation time, we're talking about tuition reimbursement, we're talking about all that stuff, which is going to come before us in April, correct?
April or May, yeah.
And so this tonight is just talking about straight compensation.
It's just straight base rate compensation.
And so I'll echo Trustee Rogers' statements. I think that as far as direct compensation, what's before us today, I feel comfortable moving forward with it because all the other stuff, the vacation time and all those other concerns are things that are going to come up before us again. And we're going to be able to look at tuition reimbursement. We're going to be able to look at leave caps. We're going to be able to look at all that stuff. So I look forward to having that conversation and having that information. But I think it's important to realize that that's not what this is tonight.
That's that's very true.
Trustee, is that it, Trustee Wall? Yes, thank you. Trustee Turner-Whiteley.
Sorry, I had to get to the mute button. I also, really appreciate the information in the study. I think we're in a little bit of a pickle here because there's obviously the board before my time chose to freeze these, and so I do agree with Trustee Rogers that it feels fair to go back to that if that was what was promised. I also hear everyone's concerns about wanting to understand total compensation in a way that makes sense and impacts everything that we think about. I feel like one part of what the recommended action on this is to approve some increases that I don't actually know what those percentages are. And so I wouldn't necessarily be, I don't know if I'm missing something, but I guess I'm curious if the increases, the COLA and merit increases that we were meant to retroactively approve, are those part of the study? Does that change the study? I'm unclear on that piece of it, I guess. So I don't know.
It doesn't
have an answer on that?
If I might, it doesn't change the study because we're not looking at the average rate of people across, the different organizations. We're looking at the maximum pay rates. The fact that the incumbents in the positions their salaries fairly lower than the 90th percentile, it doesn't change the study. And to be honest, the indirect compensation study isn't really going to change this sheet either. I mean, this sheet kind of is what it is. It's base salaries and a comparison of base salaries. The 5.75 merit and COLA would not change the study because we were looking at the maximums. We're looking at the percentiles of those maximums and making sure people stay below them and start to track. It'll just change their base rates, but none of them.
Okay. And so, and just for clarity's sake, it's a 5.75% increase retroactively to last July that we are authorizing tonight, and then another 5.75% increase that we are okaying for the coming July.
What's scheduled under the current CBAs? It was eliminated, I guess, for COVID. There was an agreement, and then they added extended the contract or the increases a year. It was 3% merit, 3% COLA over 2 years for all the groups. The COLA gets reduced slightly for PERS. But again, yes, it would have been, there should have been, this group is all evaluated at the same time during the summer. The COLA went into effect in the summer too. So last summer, there was supposed to be a 5.75% increase to base. And then in July, there's a scheduled. Now, like I said, the staff hasn't been frozen, so they're getting this. They got this last July, and they'll get it next July. And then we negotiate a new contract for that, which is why we're trying to keep things here till then. Now, if we would have seen individual base rates over the 90th percentile, we'd be having a different conversation.
Sure, of course. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Turner Whiteley.
Mr. Chair, I did have a question for.
Absolutely, Trustee Ortiz.
And this is not related to compensation. Director Watson, how come the chief financial officer is going to make less than the chief information officer as a total compensation? Who, in other words, in the structure, chain of command, and like, is it the director, chief financial officer, director, chief information officer?
There is no specific chain of command. And so we didn't adjust this was what the salaries were. So these were the ranges. So in that case, the CFO, this is his salary. So we didn't adjust his salary up to match the CIOs. We just said, this is the salary. This is what it's going to look like if you add those, add the increases, right? So as far as the chain of command, there is no second in command or second of, in command already identified. If something was to happen to me, no longer being a director, the board at that point would have the opportunity to make a decision on who they wanted to replace me with on an interim or acting basis.
But having said that, Director, just to follow up, you're out sick, you have surgery.
If I may, Trustee Ortiz, we're getting off the subject of this thing here. I think you're bringing up a point that we should put under new business as an action item.
I'm just trying to get to see that, if I may. Our bylaws call for the chief financial officer to sign checks in case you're in the hospital. That's the reason for the question. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. You're right. That's.
Well, I mean, our treasurer can sign checks too. So we've got more than one person.
You're not an employee. So.
If you want to pay me 100.
Anyway, I'll be bringing back up.
Okay, yeah, I actually would agree with you. I'd like to see that as a new business item myself, but I don't think it's relevant to this. I will just to sum up here real quick, then I will restate, I like the retroactive. I'm comfortable with that myself personally. I support it because I think the staff we have is a good staff and deserves it, and they've been patient. But that being said, I see with my intent to vote in support of retroactive, on whatever we decide, I don't see the harm in tabling the vote on this until we have the entire package, because I want to see the line number. If we're putting a maximum salary that's at median plus 10% of market, and then we see the indirect compensation is coming in at 20% under market or 40% over market, I want to know that before we're voting and locking in the salary range based on the market. It just seems like the total compensation package to me should be together. So that being said, we're going to first start off and see if the board agrees with me. And I'm going to make a motion to table the vote on this until we have the indirect piece to go with the total package.
I'll
Do I have a
second that.
second?
I'll second.
Second by trustee Foyt. All in favor? Aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, who was that online? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Trustee Rogers.
Trustee. I know
And trustee
Trustee
Turner Whiteley.
Rogers and trustee Turner Whiteley opposed. Okay, and trustee Wah opposed. Okay, so motion carries. We will bring this back up as a total compensation package. We can do it 2 items on the same meeting, by the way. I'm fine with 2 separate agenda items, just that we're sure we know what we're voting on all together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Off the hot seat.
And the last item, discussion and possible board action to change the start time of the regular Board of Trustees meeting to 5 PM. I guess I will introduce this quickly. After we had our January meeting that everybody was so kind to move forward with me. I had a couple trustees and a couple members of staff comment that made it easier for them in their scheduling and they liked it. So we checked the availability of all board members and all required staff that would have to be here to attend. The time that everybody could fit into their schedule that worked the best was 5 PM, where we knew that all trustees could attend, all staff could attend. So on that note, the agenda item is recommending that we move the regular Board of Trustees meetings to 5 PM going forward. Any discussion, comments, questions?
Trustee
Chair,
Rogers
I
has
have
a
one.
comment. But I'll defer to trustee Whiteley.
No, you first. You first, Dr. Utters.
Yeah, and I would say that I know that time doesn't work for me. I teach a class and I sort of made my class commitments until based on the current board meeting schedule and time. And so if we were to move the meeting, I would probably miss all the meetings for this semester. So for me, that is a problem with my participation.
Okay, then for me on that note, it's critical that everybody's able to attend. If trustee Rogers is unable to attend with the meeting time, I would just pull this meeting from this item from the agenda then, because I need everybody here. So that being said, there's no need for a vote. We're just going to take this off the agenda then. Okay. Anything I missed with that, Jerry?
Nope.
Okay, great. Then on that note, none of the announcements have to change.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
did we go through the appointment of the Qualic B Mesquite Board?
Yeah, that was the consent agenda item we started with.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So on that note, the announcements all remain the same. The meetings will remain at 6 PM. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment here at this time, Ebony?
No, we don't.
Okay, I want to thank everybody. I know this meeting's longer than they have been later, but I wanted to make sure we got everybody's thoughts in and we get this right. And we are adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.